Hello and welcome to the 11th episode of Ask a DM and the first episode of 2022. And this is a show where we take questions from the D&D community and I bring on a guest to answer them with me. So let me show you who the guest is this week. It is Crispy's Tavern, sorry,
That's all
plural.
good.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, of course. My name is Crispy. I am the host of Crispy's Tavern, D&D tips and stories. I cover RPG horror stories. I do weekly D&D advice. I have a podcast where I interview D&D YouTubers, and I also have a D&D podcast where we do a campaign diary series and also Q&As. We do a lot of stuff on the show all about D&D, so if you want to check out my channel, we've been growing a lot recently, so I mean, we'd love to have you join up with the Tavern.
Awesome. And all of Crispy's places you can find him are down in the description as well. So there's the YouTube channel and a Spotify link to the podcast. So you can go check him out there. And first off, we always ask you some generic DM questions to see what sort of DM you are. So, first off, do you homebrew or do you run modules usually?
Okay, so when I'm DMing, I ran one module and it was covered in an RPG horror story episode because it did not go well, but the module was cursed strong. So it was great. It wasn't the module's fault. It's just I love the creativity and the world building that DMing can allow you to do. Like a lot of people want to write their own books or create their own worlds, but that can be really hard. But D&D allows you to do that in a game with your friends. You just need to make it, you need to make it good. But beyond that hurdle, you just need to play the game, build your own world. It's a really fun time, and I've built my own homebrew world. All my campaigns have taken place in it, and me and my friends, we've had such a good time battling my own homebrewed like Lovecraftian horrors, my own homebrewed version of the D&D pantheon. They just met a homebrewed version of the Raven Queen based around Wild West mysticism, which I thought was a really cool like twist on that character. So yeah, I love homebrewing.
And with your love of homebrewing, then, how much preparation would you say you usually do?
We
Are
don't we
you
don't we try not to think about that here.
okay?
It's a lot. I try not to like dwell on how many hours it is. I will say that like the my sessions are all like night owl sessions. Like we go from like 9-10 p.m. to like 12 at night because like I'll have to wake up super early because I do freelance and I do YouTube. So there's not really like an early bird morning wake up call for me. So that's like that allows us to go late. So the day of the session, I'll like just do some like last minute like prepping stuff, which means like I look through all my maps, make sure maps are uploaded, make sure our enemies are all placed well, make sure the dungeon has all the wall because I play online, make sure the dungeon has all the walls properly placed and doors are working and the music. I have like music playlists so that I can sync what I say to music to make it all the more epic, run through any technical difficulties. So that takes about 2 hours, and then just throughout the week, I just prep whenever I find the time. I like to think that I prep less than 4 hours, but knowing myself and knowing how much I don't have a work life balance, I probably prep 4 to 8 hours a week.
Yeah, makes sense. I when I first started, I prepped far too much. I remember the very first village that my players went to. I literally prepped every single house in the village, which
I
NPCs
don't
were in
do
the
that.
house.
I'm horrible with cities. I just say,
Yeah,
okay, you're in the city. I describe what the city's like architecture and aesthetic is. I have a couple of like quest relevant NPCs, and then shopkeepers. I come up with their personality based on like a couple of like randomly generated adjectives.
yeah, definitely. So what sort of level is your favourite to DM then, player wise?
So, okay, player wise, when I'm DMing, I really like sorry, excuse me, level 7 to like level 10, even level 5 to level
Okay.
10, that mid range is so awesome. But I do think you can get some really epic and awesome adventures level 15 to level 18. I have never gone on to 20. My players have gotten to level 18 at max. They battled a homebrewed version of Orcus, and it was the most epic thing ever. But I don't think I could run an extended adventure with them at level 17 to 18. I was rushing them. Like they were leveling up every couple sessions because we just wanted to get through these higher levels to get to the final big bad. I didn't want them to stay in this zone for too long. It was only like 10 sessions where they were ultra powerful because as a DM, I really like it when encounters have that crisp balance of being just hard enough that it really challenges the players, but not so hard that it instantly kills them. I love those finely tuned encounters, which is really hard for me to do when they're at level 17, level 18.
Yeah, definitely. I think the higher you get, the harder it gets, especially if you're a new DM.
Oh
Take
yeah.
it slow and start low and go up higher. Okay, cool. Let's jump into the questions then. So most of our questions that I've pre-populated this week are from Twitter. So there's quite a lot of Twitter here. Any of you watching, if you want to ask questions, do put them in the live chat and we will be monitoring them as well. Cool. So the first one is by Dungeon Hunters over on Twitter, and it says, "What do you think is your strongest pillar of D&D in your Dungeon Master arsenal?" So you're credible at combat, social interaction, exploration, survival. What do you think you're good at?
I distinctly remember, like, when I was doing Q&A, somebody asked me, like, what's your favorite pillar of D&D? And they listed these. And I was like, there are pillars of D&D? Where did these come from? But no, I was completely unaware of what these were. But now that I think about it, like, I I think that I like exploration a lot in my games. Like when I'm creating, even when I'm creating like player characters, when I'm creating locations, when I'm creating NPCs, I always start with like the aesthetic and what it looks like because that's really important to me. I like things to be cool, for lack of a better
Mm,
word. So, when they visit a new city, I like it to inspire some sort of wonder. Like my players' favorite locations are the ones that are like cool. They're crazy. Like, for example, they visited a hidden dark elf city where the city they worship the Moonweaver, and it's like in this in extra dimensional like Feywild like pocket dimension. You pass through a door, and it's this beautiful city suspended in a permanent twilight with a giant moon. It looks really beautiful and amazing. I had a reference image that they can look at. Everything is made of this shiny marble. Everything glows with like almost like a gemstone sheen, and it was really interesting for my players to explore this magical place. It was really the first area that they went through that wasn't like the Game of Thrones type bleak area, and
mm,
they loved it. So yeah, I like that exploration feeling that I give my players, that feeling of wonder. But I also I'm not like a pro combat DM, like I'm not running perfect combats, but every combat that we've run so far in this campaign, my second campaign, my second full campaign ever actually, every encounter has been pretty tightly tuned. Like the monster downs like a few players, which is not the goal, but I know that's hard enough that it numbers wise downed a couple players, and also the players were able to kill it in a amount of rounds that I find appropriate. Like it didn't take too long, but it wasn't too easy. So yeah, I'm not incredible at combat, but I balance my combats well enough that it presents my players with a challenge and it forces them to pay attention. Like if my players are not paying attention during one of my combats, their characters will probably not make it out. So they have to pay attention. They need to plan. They need to be able to, use their spells and abilities effectively. Like my ranger, he for a long time didn't use any spells, but now he's been combining stuff like Hunter's Mark, Zephyr Strike. He's got his own homebrewed ability where he gets an extra D6 on top of that. So he's been combining all these abilities together to maximize his damage. He's got multiple different guns to counter resistances. I mean, he's been planning it out. It's not so bad that they need to like power game, because I don't
mm.
think that they would be into that. But it's hard enough that it forces them to care and pay attention.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. So I would say that my strongest pillar is probably the social interaction and role playing one, which is funny that it's pretty much the opposite of what you said. So that exploration for me is definitely my weakest, and I've said this before on this show that I actually struggle quite a bit with exploration a lot of the time because I sort of still DM in a little bit of video gamey way, I guess you would say, where it's like go to this place, talk to this NPC, and then it's up to you if you want to go to ABC. But there's still ABC rather than you like. I guess Skyrim is the best option example where you can go anywhere and do anything. Um, so yeah, exploration for me is probably my weakest. Whereas with role play and social interactions, lots of my players like love the NPCs and love the characters in the world. So I'd definitely say that is my strongest over the other two.
Yeah, I
I
just
do
don't think
enjoy.
that I just don't put that at my top because my players like aren't super like into roleplay and like talking in character. They like my NPCs and their personalities, but like we don't have like in-depth conversations most of the time. But
Mm.
that's starting to change. Like recently, that Raven Queen take that I mentioned earlier, she was talking to uh the pirate character in our campaign because she's the Raven Queen, she's the goddess of death, and obviously a pirate would be closest associated. And there was this really interesting encounter where they had an in-depth conversation about the nature of death, and it was fun. It was a little bit
Mm.
cliche because I'm not like a dialogue master or whatever. I'm not Mad Master, but it was fun. I had a good time with it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, and a really good tip for any newer DMs out there that you do have to pivot depending on what your players like and don't like. I DM'd a small adventure campaign of players that loved combat, and that was what they were there for. So I put more emphasis on combat, making sure the combat is cool over social interaction because they weren't really that interested in social interaction.
Yeah,
So that is a
absolutely.
very good point. Cool,
Yeah,
let's go on
and
to.
there's nothing wrong with that either. If you want to play, you can play whatever type of game you want to play. It just depends on what the group cares about.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of conversation online about people trying to gatekeep D&D in different ways, saying it should be played this way, it shouldn't be played how Critical Role play it. But really, it doesn't matter. As long as everyone's enjoying themselves, and if you're
Exactly, yeah.
not enjoying yourself, go find another table. It doesn't matter, or just stop playing. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, as long as everyone's enjoying
The
themselves.
only way to play D&D wrong is if people are not having a good time. If everyone's having a good time, doesn't matter.
Yeah, crack on. You can do what you like. I agree. All right, let's jump on to the next question then. So, Rio, I think is how you say that. Let's go with that. Ivor on Twitter says, sometimes your players don't find the thing. What's your go-to solution? Do you disregard and pivot the story?
This
Do
was
you have
a
any tips for
tip
this?
that I'm gonna pilfer because usually my players just do find the thing. I've never really had to deal with this, but recently I was watching a Jenny D video where she was talking with like a friend of hers, Jesse Jurdak, I think his name was, and in this video. She asks this exact question, and he said something that I found really cool. The thing that they're looking for is wherever they're looking. So, for example, if you
No.
planned for the thing, like they're looking for a key in like this inn room, they're looking for a key, and the key is hidden under the bed, but none of the players are looking under the bed. Like it's been 5, 7, 10 minutes, and then they're just not looking under the bed. So instead of like trying to just like not metagame, but like try to like just shove them forcefully in that direction. If they're looking in the cabinets, eventually just have it be in the cabinet. Like, what's the big deal? It can be in the cabinet if they are looking there. If they are working hard enough and they're looking for like trick cabinets and they're looking for like trick floorboards. I mean, that honestly might be more clever. Just put it there. It's not really a big deal like where the thing is found, as long as the players feel smart that they found it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That point that you ended with there. Players are there to have fun and feel accomplishment and feel smart. So if you can do that by altering where the thing is, or I spoke about this as well when we had Wally DM on. You can do puzzles where you don't actually have an answer to the puzzle. So you just put a puzzle in front of them, see what they do, and then if they think of something creative, you can be like, yes, that's the answer. Let's go with it. And I've definitely had it in my games where I have thought of a cool story beat, and then one of the players has been like, "Oh, I think I've worked it out. It's this, that, that, and this," and their idea is much better than mine.
Oh yeah.
So I've just been like, "Oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Let's go with that." So you can definitely pivot the story whenever you like as the DM, and I think that's quite nerve wracking for newer DMs is to just throw the story in the air and go a different way. But it's something you can learn to do, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Let's jump on to the next one then. So another one over from Twitter. So Naiva Righteous asked, when a PC casts some sort of charisma-based spell, such as suggestion, is the spell being cast noticed by others, or does it only look like people having a conversation?
I know, cool.
What would you say?
I have okay. Man, I don't know. I'm okay. First and foremost, my players almost never use like suggestion or charisma based
Okay.
spells, and even in games I play, like it's never come up. So actually, I mean, I would say that as long as here's what I normally do when my players are trying to stealth cast or stealthily do something, I usually just have them roll a check. Let's see if you could do this without other
Mm.
people noticing. So like the way I imagine it is like a player is casting the spell. Like there's magic that comes off their fingertips. They're doing like hand gestures. They might I don't remember the components for suggestion, but if there's like a verbal component, then they're saying something too. So in that case, I would have them like roll perhaps stealth to, or like I sometimes joke like have them roll like subtlety. I mean, that's not a thing. It's just like a little thing I say, but have them roll stealth or subtlety, and if they roll high, then I say like I describe it as okay, you managed to like hide the gestures, speak under your breath, cast the spell quietly, and then to the other people around, like whoever the suggestion spell is being cast, they don't notice. I will say like I don't. This is specifically talking about NPCs, right? Because if they're casting suggestion on a player, I roll that completely differently.
Yeah, definitely. I think in the latest Critical Role episode, actually, there was a situation where someone tried to cast a spell subtly, and yeah, he got them to roll sleight of hand to see if they could do it.
I like that.
And yeah, I like that as well. I do think you have to be a little bit careful because if there's a sorceress or sorcerer that has the subtle spell meta magic option, they can do this automatically, and then by letting other players in that game do it as well, you're sort of taking something away from them. I would say, but if you do it, if I guess you could just make the DC higher.
No, I would
For
say
the other
like I would
people.
say that for somebody with like I have a sorcerer in my current game, and he hasn't used subtle spell, but I'm sure he's thought about it at some point. With subtle spell, I would say that just make it like much easier to do and make the DC high for people who don't have like a special spell casting thing they can use. It still makes sorcerer feel special because they don't have to like go over as many hurdles.
Yeah, definitely. I think in particular with these charisma-based spells like suggestion, the way I have ruled in the past is that it's like people having conversations, but because it has a somatic component, you have to do something with your hands. So sort of like the old thing in Star Wars where he has to do that over to make them So although it looks like a normal spell, it if someone was watching, they'd be like, "Why the hell is he moving his
Yeah,
hands like
exactly.
that?"
Why did the
Um,
stormtrooper just let him through? Hey, dude, you okay? Like check up on him.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's how I would rule it.
Especially since
Anyway,
this is another thing that I do. Like speaking of like grunts getting like mind controlled, like this is also a good opportunity to give them a little bit of depth. I don't know about like the audience or your players, but my players love it when random grunts have a little bit of personality. Like my favorite scene in the Mandalorian television show. Like I had never been super into Star Wars, but my favorite scene in the Mandalorian is when those two scout troopers are just having a casual conversation, kind of like Red versus Blue, that the Halo web series, when they're like trying to hit the target and like talking about like, oh, our commander sucks, he just killed like two of his guys, and they're like just having casual chat. It gives them a little bit of personality, and I really love that moment so much. And I try to replicate that in my D&D games. Random guards or kobolds will have funny conversations that endear them to my players, and sometimes my players will even just like let them live or try to stealth past them because they're like, oh, these guys are cool, they're just doing their job.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That's one of my main tips for people that are struggling with boring combat is have the NPCs talk during the combat. I think that can add loads of depth. If you're,
Yeah.
obviously it doesn't work if you're fighting monsters or whatever, but if you're fighting some goblins or some orcs or some humans, you can make them shout things to each other, shout things at the players like insults, or like when one of them's about to die, it can shout something like, "Make sure my wife knows this about thingy," like
Yeah.
to give them a bit of personality, and that always really works well
Mm-hmm.
for people who struggle with combat. Yeah, some really good points there. Let's jump on to the next one then. So it's Brigit Tack. I'm going to say is how you say that. Are you ever nervous your story won't live up to the amazing PCs that people create? Have you ever had that feeling?
I mean, I love this is something that I also think is important. It's great that you describe your PCs as amazing because the DM should also be a fan of the player characters. Like that's something that I try to aspire to. I love the player characters in my campaign. Like if they die, I'm bummed. Like I'm sad. That sucks because I like these characters. I like their personality, their aesthetic, their story. I try to be a fan of my players' characters, so that's good. I never really get nervous that the story won't live up to them because, I mean, I know my players. Like I know the people playing these characters, and I know that they enjoy my game. Like even when I have like, side note, like I struggle with spiraling thoughts and anxiety. So like even when I'm having spiraling thoughts and my brain is going to these ridiculous negative scenarios that in reality make no sense. Even during those times, like the thing that chills me out is realizing that my players are showing up to like 2 to 4 hour games weekly at night to my games. Like they enjoy this. They have fun. So I never have to worry about my story not living up to their expectations or to their player characters because I know that they enjoy the game.
Yeah, and I would add as well that if so they have made amazing player characters, they've got amazing backstories, amazing characters. Uh, I would imagine that that's going to lift your story more because now
Oh
you
yeah.
have more ammunition to add to your story. I love it when a PC or a player will come to me with like a really good, solid background with great ideas because then gets my cogs turning of how I can then incorporate that into the story beats that I had already thought. And it's absolutely okay if players don't care too much about their backstory and they just put one paragraph together, but really the more they can give you, the more you can include it in your games and go from there. So yeah, once
Yeah.
again, I've never felt nervous about it. If anything, I would say that if people do create amazing PCs and make amazing backstories, your story is going to be better naturally because you can take that what they've done and put it in your story.
Yeah. Spoilers for my D&D podcast, but like recently we had a player character very unexpectedly pass. Like she was low on health. I had no idea she was low on health, and a rogue hit her with sneak attack plus poison that just snapped killed her like right there. No death saves, nothing, just dead. And I was like, well, crap. It was intense. There were tears. It was sad. But I mean, I was really like a great pick me up was when she made her new character who's like this like punk like student from Hogwarts. Like imagine like a high school like punk that went to Hogwarts. I love that idea. And so like this young person joining up with a party of pirates like to show them what's up. I just that's a cool concept, and she's really become one of my favorite characters. I mean, all of the characters are my favorite characters, but she has become another favorite character in my game. I really like Talia Fairchild and her crazy inventions, and because she's an artificer and that character. Like, so even though I was really sad that a player character died, like, yeah, I mean, player characters that that your players create can really elevate your game and more importantly your love of running the game.
Yeah, I definitely think if you use player death, if you handle it well, it can actually be some of the best story points in the whole campaign. I've definitely had that where player characters died, and that's been one of the standout story points, and it's motivated the rest of them to go and deal with the big bad more than before, and it's sort of added another level to the story. So, player death can actually be a good thing, which sounds weird to say.
Yeah,
Or
but
well,
I mean,
player character death.
it can absolutely be a good thing. I mean, I don't think that's weird at all. It's good
Mm,
storytelling, even if it's sad.
definitely. Yeah. Right, let's go to the next question then. So we got Sophie B PhD over on Twitter who asked, "How do you not tell your players about all the cool ideas you have? I have so many fun ideas and I can't tell anyone because of spoilers." Do you ever suffer with this when you have cool ideas and you
Absolutely.
just really want to tell someone
So
about it?
so much all the time. Like, oh my god. Sometimes I'll peel back the curtain. I'll peel back the curtain and actually show them like if an encounter is done and it's done and over
Mm.
with, like I'll discard any pertinent information that might come up later, but I will show them like my notes occasionally, like if they were like, "Oh my god, Crispy, that conversation was so cool. Did you like write that down?" And they'll be like, "Nope, here's the notes." And I'll show them like how I came up with the conversation, like how like the themes that I try to incorporate, like how like I write out dialogue, etc. So yeah, sometimes I'll peel back the curtain after the fact, but yeah, it's hard to keep stuff secret. Like I have been seeding cosmic horror elements into my seafaring campaign because I think that pirates plus Cthulhu just works really well together. I
Yeah.
love cosmic horror. Uh, I need to maybe chill out because like both campaigns I've run have had not heavy but light cosmic horror elements, and I probably need to chill and like do something else because I've been running for the same group and they've seen like not the same themes but similar themes. So I mean, now that the campaign has gotten to pretty much the midway point, we're hitting like a part of the game where I'm going to be introducing more of these cosmic horror elements, and I'm finally peeling back the curtain. But keeping it all under wraps for so long was a pain, especially since there's a lot of twists in my campaign that I've got planned out for the long haul. Like things that I've been seeding for a while, and it's so hard to keep it under wraps. And even describe, and if you describe it to a random person, you sound crazy. Like I don't know about you, but when I describe my D&D game to some random stranger or even like a DM friend, I sound like a rambling idiot. so
Yeah.
so yeah, that's so yeah, it's you just gotta keep it down and then just remember that when you finally reveal that thing, oh my god, it's gonna be worth it, dude. It's gonna feel great.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. When I started, I was definitely like this. I was like, "Oh, this is such a cool idea. I really want to tell everyone." But then the first time I had like a wow moment where something was revealed, and the players were like, "Oh my god, that's amazing!" That then makes me want to keep everything a secret, because now I know that if I am good at keeping stuff a secret, there will be that wow moment again where it's all unraveled and they get to experience the cool thing and they're wowed by it. And that is a very positive experience as a DM when you
Yeah.
get that from your players. In fact, they're probably like some of the best moments is when you have managed to pull that off and your players are just as shocked or as wowed as you would hope that they could be by your storytelling. Um, I do actually do what you said there as well. I do just tell my other DM friends that aren't involved in the game, and probably, as you said, sound crazy, but
Because there's so
they
much to
sort of
explain.
get it.
There's so much
Yeah.
context. There's so much that they need to know, and like try to get it all within like a 2-minute conversation is nigh on impossible.
Yeah, definitely. I did. So I did a little live stream adventure last year. It was only 8 sessions. It was a little taster for me to see if I wanted to do more, and I will be doing more this year. But I thought of a like behind the scenes show where I told viewers what like stuff that's going to be happening or like the story semi in advance to let them behind the curtain and then let them see it unfold to the players. But I'm not actually sure if people would enjoy that or not. Like, or if like the reason people view it is to also experience the wow in the moment, or if people be like, I know something the players don't know. That's cool, sort of situation. So I
I'm just worried that my
didn't do
players
it.
will like
Well,
watch
yeah, you
my
have to trust
show.
your players, don't you, a
Yeah,
lot. But
I trust my players. I like them a lot, but like I don't put spoilers in campaign diary. Like when I seed a twist, which I have done, like I've seeded a twist in campaign diary. I don't like reveal what it's going to be until it happens. Which yeah,
yeah, yeah, I probably won't do it. It's just an idea I thought that some people might be quite interested in, but I probably won't do it. So that's cool.
Mhm.
I'm just going to remind everyone that if you have any questions yourself, do put them into the chat, and we will answer them as well as we go along. And if you are getting value out of this, please do give it a like. It helps show it to more people who might want their questions answered. So that would be cool. Let's go on to the next question then. So it's A Wizard Is You over on Twitter. What makes a good starting town or area, do you think?
What makes a good starting town or area? Probably, okay, so the first thing that I definitely need to handle with starting towns is making sure that it's important. Like, I don't want to just have them go to a place and have it not have any story relevance. It needs to have story relevance beyond just new place. Because they like the places in my campaign, and I don't want to push them into somewhere else without it being cool or important. Like when they went to the city of Anglefall, yeah, it had a cool like noir aesthetic with vampires. That's sick. I like New York vampires, or at least like not real life New York, but like film New York, like those like black and white movies, like the Casablanca type of like city. Even though that
Yeah.
definitely wasn't New York, that was Casablanca. But anyway, point is, like I like the aesthetic, but beyond the aesthetic and like the cool factor of it, it also needs to have story relevance. They were in that city for a reason. The pirate captain player character, played by my good friend Caden, his ship was in the city and being held by a vampire who mutinied against him, and he wanted revenge. Like there was story relevance. They were there for a reason.
Cool. I think one big thing that I like to make sure is included in pretty much any town and area, but especially the starting town and area, is making sure that the, I guess, feel of this campaign is there from the beginning. So, for example, if you are running Curse of Strahd, you want the starting town to be like depressive in a way, or oppressed by Strahd, and you want it to be very gothic horror esque, which the starting town is, but the village of Barovia is in Curse of Strahd. But if you were running quite like a high tech type campaign, then you'd want there to be a clock tower and some really cool tech in the town. So I think that is something to keep in mind when you're doing the starting area, is make sure that it hits the story beats and the beats that you want to get them to understand that this is what the campaign is going to be like from the get-go. Is another thing as well, and I still like to put a sort of, I guess, quest giver in the starting area, or like a friendly person, someone that they can go to and ask questions, because especially if you're homebrewing and someone's coming in knowing absolutely nothing about your area or about your campaign world, it's good for them to have someone they can go and ask questions to, so they can just be like, who's the ruler here, what are the guards like, who's the most powerful wizard, if they wanted to ask those questions, or if there's anything they wanted to know, they have someone that they can go and ask those
One
questions.
benefit of running seafaring campaign is that my party, their party name is the crew of the Jack Harlow, but beyond the party there is also other members of the crew. They've got a quartermaster named Victor. They've got an assassin paladin named Rydia. They have people on the ship that go with them pretty much everywhere that they can ask questions, NPCs that they can ask like their perspectives. And also another cool thing, I like having multiple NPCs that can give different perspectives. It makes this world feel all the more alive. Like their buddy the mayor is an ancient vampire. He's really, really, really old. So obviously he'll have a more friendly perspective towards, monsters, or have a lot of historical knowledge. Whereas Victor is this like, this rough around the edges, like gambler type. He'll have a very grounded perspective on the city. He won't be talking about mysticism or history. He'll be talking about like who the people are, who we can rob from. That's about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one more thing I want to mention just about the starting town or area is, don't give them too many options if you're starting the campaign there.
Oh yeah.
I have made that mistake where I've dropped someone into a town and just been like, so what do you want to do? And they're like, what do you mean? What do I want to do? I don't know what I want to do.
Give me
So
direction.
yeah, so at least for the first town or the first few sessions, make sure that it's obvious to them what you would like them to do, and they're more likely going to do that, and then you can branch off and do different things as you go
Also,
on.
just it reduces your prep time. If you have a clear path just for starting out, it reduces your prep time. Like for if you turn the Hobbit into a D&D campaign, like you started in the Shire, you go with Gandalf to have the adventure. Like that's it. That's pretty much the only choice you can make if you want to play the game. And there's that social contract between players and DMs where the players agree to, go along the adventure. Like for example, we've been talking about Curse of Strahd. Like if you're playing Curse of Strahd, the players can't refuse to go to Barovia. Like the whole point is to play Curse of Strahd in Barovia, right? So yeah, that's part of it. The DM has to offer choices, but yeah, that's a good point. Like you don't want your starting town to be filled with endless choices that your players have no idea what to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. We got a comment from Caroline L. Abbott saying, I have no questions, but I'm enjoying the discussion. Thank you very much. I'm glad you are here and enjoying the discussion. We have a load more questions, but if you do think of any questions along the way, just let us know and we can help you out, hopefully. So the next question is from Liz Wilcox 79 over on Twitter. So, what do you do in a combat situation if you're playing a spellcaster who's out of spells? So this is a player question, I guess.
Don't run out of
If you're a
spells.
player, yeah, well, yeah.
Don't be conservative with how you. Don't be too conservative. Like check. Okay, my players have a general awareness of how my dungeons and my encounters are structured. I will occasionally surprise them. Like they'll kill. Like just literally last night, they killed the horrible Herald in Scarlet, this monstrosity from the void. They had to pull out all the stops to kill it. They couldn't beat it on their own. They had to draw it to the beach and draw it towards their ship so they could blow it up with cannons. And even that didn't work. So they had multiple volleys. It was epic. It was amazing. It really showed like the power of a Lovecraftian creature. But after that, they thought they had won. They got their loot, and then suddenly the BBEG showed up. So now they've got to deal with that. So sometimes I will surprise them, but generally they have an idea of how I structure my encounters. I structure them strategically so that my players don't have to run out of spells like easily. Like I don't have like 5 different combat encounters that are going to take multiple, like a ton of rounds, so that my spellcasters can realistically like they can't. I don't structure it so that they can hoard spell slots and they never have to worry about it. They do need to worry about resource management, but they don't have to they don't have to like conserve all their spell slots all the time. But yeah, if you run out of spells, cast cantrips, man.
Yeah, I think Wizards of the Coast have done a pretty good job at scaling cantrips as well.
Yes, cantrips are great.
Combat
Yeah.
cantrips, anyway.
You can realistically take a turn. If you cast like Firebolt is not a waste of a turn. Like Firebolt deals decent damage. If you're a Warlock and you cast Eldritch Blast, you're not wasting your turn. Like it's a good spell. Damage is damage, dude, and you can do some pretty decent work with cantrips.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the obvious answer here. It's just start using cantrips. There's no real point of getting a crossbow out if you're a wizard because you're probably not going to do much.
Don't get out crossbow, especially if things have like non-magical damage resist. Because a lot of creatures, when you get to like 7th, 8th level, you're looking at a lot of magical resist or non-magical resist.
Yeah, definitely. I guess one other thing to think about is if there is anything creative you can do. Look at the or ask the DM about the environment and see if there's any, I don't know, any way you can close a door that's going to help this situation, or if there's this item that you can grab and it's going to annoy the bad guy and do something. There might be stuff like that in the environment that you can do, which just involves movement and then interacting with objects, but most of the time you're going to be using cantrips, I think, anyway. Cool. On to the next one then. So from Twitter again, Brainstorm Int asked, how much does the artwork in a book drive you to purchase it to run for your games?
It doesn't.
Which I think is quite an interesting question.
A sale on Amazon pushes me to buy a book to use it for my games. If a D&D book is $50, I'm not buying it. I'm just saying. Like the power of Google is vast and amazing, and honestly, like up until recently, I owned like 2 D&D books, and most of the time, like I'm using like the D&D book I've been using the most recently is Tasha's, because Tasha's has a lot of cool like variant stuff that I've been using in my games to spice things up, because we've been playing for like 3 years now and I want to spice things up a little bit. But honestly, for like a long time, the DMG was just a display piece on my bookshelf, because yeah, the cover is cool, but beyond like initially learning how to play Dungeons and Dragons, like I don't use books that much, just because like I can look things up in Google, and the wikis out there are very great. Like Roll20, D&D Beyond, they've got some good stuff on there just for free. So yeah, the art is cool, and I like using books as a display piece. Like if you watch my videos, like I've got Tasha's Cauldron of Everything like right behind me right now. I've got art, like the Dungeon Craft books I use for a display piece on like my bottom left. Like they look cool, but beyond that, like I usually just like if I can see the book is like on sale for like 60% off, yeah, why not? Like it's $20.
Yeah, I think for me the artwork comes if it's a book that has a lot of monsters, then I really like the artwork of the monsters. So, for example, Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which came out recently, there's so much cool artwork of dragons. So I like that because then rather than having to give a description of, let's say, the Elder Dragon, which I would say is quite hard to describe, you can pull up the image and show that to your players, and then they'll understand right away who the or what it looks like. So, yeah, in those kinds of books, I do care about the artwork somewhat. I don't know if it would drive me to buy it though.
Yeah, no. I do think the power of art should not be like mistaken. Art is like the perfect inspiration, though I don't usually like look through books. Like I have ArtStation bookmarked, and I scroll through the front page all the time because there's so much awesome concept art on ArtStation. It's, if you don't know about it, I mean, you need to check it out. Just because, first, cool art. Two, you can support some really cool artists on their professional portfolio, which is used to get them jobs. So that's also helpful. And three, it can provide awesome inspiration for your games. Like, I was looking through ArtStation and I came up with, like, through ArtStation, I decide like what the final boss of like this arc would look like just by looking through a profile with cool monster designs.
Yeah, definitely. I think I used to, I don't actually as much anymore, but I used to use Pinterest as well. There's quite a lot of cool artists sharing their art over on Pinterest for D&D.
Pinterest board is mandatory for when I start making a new D&D character. That's like a mandatory step for me.
Yeah, definitely. I would say as a DM, description is one of my weakest links, or weaker links, I should say. So getting art is very helpful for me, because rather than explaining how this scene looks or how this item looks, I can just show a picture, which is much easier for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Weird Gal saying, "Hey, I've got a couple of questions. I just joined a group for it, but I can't get my hand on an actual copy. My grandparents and mum think that D&D is the devil's game when it really isn't. How do I get the books for it?" She did finish that off in the next comment. That's a very
unfortunate
unusual
situation.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you.
That is an answer.
That's mean. Okay, legit though. First and foremost, you're probably not going to convince your parents or your grandparents that D&D is not the devil's game. Here's something that I learned about people when I look and analyze and work in media. People are very stubborn, and when they believe something, they don't usually unbelieve it. That's the way people are. I mean, like, just look how stubborn people get when, like, it comes to television or film opinions. Like, people get stubborn and heated. So think about that, and then realize that we're talking about, like, your family, like, really have, like, a serious belief about this game. This is, like, something that they take seriously, and it's probably not going to fade. The honest thing is that if you're in school still, if you're like in high school or you're going to uni, I know that, like, when I was in high school, I didn't play in this group because I had like a group in my, like, that I had in my home. But when I was in high school, there was a D&D club, and if you want to play the game and get your hands on some materials, like, doing it through school is usually the way I do it. But yeah, that's just an unfortunate situation, man. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Back in, I think it was the 80s, there was obviously a lot of that, but most people sort of understand it nowadays, so it's unfortunate that you're in that situation. I think later on, Jason in the chat has said that there's tons of online resources, like
tons of online stuff, yeah.
So you can probably do that without needing a physical book, so hopefully they shouldn't know as much. I'm not saying, lie to your parents, because that would be very irresponsible for me. But if you wanted to, you could do it that way.
If you want to play D&D, there are ways to do it.
And the other thing to add to your school comment there as well is, if you have any sort of board. We have board game cafes near me where you can go and play board games and stuff. I don't know what you'd call them over in America. What sort of things you have over in America? Like game? Do you have like gaming shops? I don't know.
There's game shops, yeah, but they're quickly like, especially after the pandemic, like a lot
Well,
of
yeah.
the ones I used to go to, they are not a thing anymore, unfortunately.
And then there's also you can like find on Facebook groups, on Reddit, and on people's Discords. There are groups all over the place. So there's probably some groups near you that you can go to, and you can use other people's books to make your characters. I, as a DM, will always loan my books out to players if they need to.
We live in a world with like so much interconnectivity and resources. You'll find a way to play this game if you search.
And they've added, is there anywhere you can get it for free? So they have released I forgot what they call it. It's a free subsection.
They released it on the D&D on the D&D website.
I'll see if I can find it so they've got like a free rule set, which is pretty good, to be fair. There's a lot of information there. I think there's one subclass from every single class.
I know that the old, I'm not gonna say its name because it is illegal, but the old way to get D&D PDFs for free has gone to the void recently. So yeah, that was something that I saw happen. Unfortunate so you can't do it that way anymore. But there are free D&D resources out there, and yeah, tons of groups on Facebook. You can find there's LFGs on Reddit, Roll20, tons of ways to play online. I've been playing online for the past year, and it is awesome. I love playing online. So there are tons of resources if you want to play Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah, and I just put a link in the chat for the basic rules, is what they call it, and they're completely free for anyone to use, and they will get you started with D&D. I believe they've got one subclass for every class and stuff like that. Or just go around Google and have a look. Cool. Jason saying that a quick Google search has shown that there are specific PDFs or D&D free, and you'll find a lot of research on Google. So hopefully that helped. You're in a very unusual situation that I definitely haven't come up
Sorry, man.
from before, but hopefully that can help a bit. I do think, in a weird way, all of these D&D streams like Critical Role that are up and about are helping people who can't access D&D, because you can now, rather than playing it, you can still experience D&D by watching other people like Critical Role play it, if you are in an unfortunate situation like that, which is quite interesting to think about. Cool. If anyone else has any questions, do put them in the chat. We've got another 15 minutes of answering questions here, so chuck any questions you might have in the chat. In the meantime, I'll take another one from over at Twitter. So Kana Rushino, I'm going to say is how you say that, asked, how do you feel about the flanking rule? Are you familiar with the flanking rule?
I am. My players just started using it. I balance it around the fact that I have a rogue in my campaign. She has insane damage. I mean, it can get pretty crazy. So essentially what I do is, if she flanks for sneak attack, the first attack is sneak attack, the second, and when she levels up again, I think she'll get a third. But yeah, the second and third are not. It's just the first one, because when the way I logic it out is, if she's flanking a creature, she gets one attack where she has where the creature is distracted, and then the creature super notices her, and while she's doing the second and third attack, it's basically turning around towards her to dodge. So yeah, that's how I do it. But yeah, flanking is something that I think should be in games. I do think that while it does add, one of my major gripes with 5e is that movement is super discouraged. People are not encouraged to move. Players almost never move in combat, especially combats that I run. Like the epic battle against the Midnight King of Draconia, Twilight Dragon of unlimited power, took place in the corner of the map exclusively, because the players started in the corner of the map and they stayed in the corner of the map. This dragon has breath attacks, has the wing attack, has everything that would incentivize them to move, but they're not incentivized to move because their movement won't get them far enough, and other positions in the map don't offer any particular advantage. So they barely moved out of that corner. So first thing that I do is instill a flanking rule to incentivize them to at least try to get into a flank sandwich with the monster. But another problem you run into is that after they get into the flank stand, which again they don't usually move, so have tools to move them. Maybe not to move them without their permission, or to move them involuntarily. Like for example, a dragon's wing attack can push players. Have giant creatures. Like this is not a rule in 5e, at least in my knowledge. But for some reason, there's not just a rule for like a 20-foot tall monster just picking up a player and just throwing them, which is something it could totally realistically do. So yeah, if there's giant monsters in my campaign, I have monsters that can run forward, charge players, and push them. I have monsters that can throw players, monsters that can try to eat players. Like I force them to move by introducing these elements. Also use the map to your advantage. If you have a map with danger zones, that'll definitely incentivize them to move. But yeah, that's a whole discussion about movement. The flanking rule is good, is what I'm trying to say.
I think that is a very interesting point about the design of D&D 5e there, that you're completely right. It does not incentivize movement at all. I don't actually use the flanking rule, and you might have just convinced me to start using it. Because I have the exact same situation as you, where they just stand in the same place pretty much and then keep going, because if they move they're going to get an opportunity of attack, and they don't want an opportunity of attack, so they might as well just stand.
Afraid of those attacks of opportunity. I don't understand why. Okay, by the way, all right, quick math for you. So if you get an attack of opportunity, that is one attack that might not hit as you're running away. If you run away to a position where the monster can't hit you, that means it can't use its multi-attack on you. So just from a numbers perspective, if you run away and just take that attack of opportunity, you're taking one attack instead of like 3 from a monster multi-attack that it would try to hit you with instead. So no,
yeah,
attacks of opportunity are not usually that bad. But players hate them. They hate getting attacked unnecessarily, at least they view as unnecessarily. It's an interesting paradigm that I've noticed.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing I do want to say about the flanking rule is I think in D&D 5e there's quite a lot of ways you can get advantage already for most people, especially if you are someone like a rogue that needs advantage. There's so many ways you can get advantage that the flanking rule definitely isn't. I think a lot of people will argue it's overpowered, but it's definitely not. There's so many other ways. If you don't do the flanking rule, you could just stealth as a bonus action if you're a rogue.
If you're playing about overpowered flanking rules, you better not be playing a wizard. You better not be playing an assassin rogue. You better not be playing like any of the large number of overpowered things in this game.
Yeah, definitely. So we got Caroline saying, I loved moving in a fight in our game a long time ago. We really enjoyed moving to get into better positions and support our teammates. I think something that a lot of people forget, or maybe players don't even know, is that there are cover rules as well. So there is half cover and 3/4 cover. So if you duck down behind like a broken wall or behind a table, you get a plus to your AC. And I think a lot of players forget that, or they just don't know that. So they'll just stand in the open hitting arrows out at people.
One of my first, and by first, I think it was like under 10. One of my like first RPG horror stories was like a story about players who like got super upset when like the DM like did cover and like shove rules, and I was like, obviously those players are like a crazy exception. I do not know how many people get like actually they got so upset they kicked the DM out of their group. I was like, what the heck? It was ridiculous. But one thing that taught me was that like, yeah, a lot of people don't know about these rules, even if most people won't get that mad about it. But I mean, more like abilities in combat gives you more options. Like one of the things that my ranger really loves about playing ranger is that he has a lot of different stuff he can do, a lot of debuffs and buffs he can give himself, and I tried to allow him to do that. I homebrew new rules to allow him to stack more spells, because if he can stack all those spells together, like I think he earned that high damage, and it gives him a lot of resources to keep track of and manage, and that can add a lot to your game. But
yeah, definitely. And we got Bomber Steve here as well, saying monster heroic or lair actions that allow it to push back combatants away add a cool flavor as well. So the dragons have that, which is pretty good. The wing attack that pushes them back 5 feet and knocks them prone. So yeah, definitely that is another cool way.
Lair and legendary actions that allow for monster movement, underutilized. People always think about like, oh, the legendary action that lets the thing cast a spell to hit players. cool, whatever. But a legendary action that lets them like move and like shove a player, way more intense.
Yeah, definitely.
Where's my
Uh,
thing?
we had in one of our games where someone got pushed off a cliff, and
Intense,
that
scary,
yeah,
terrifying.
oh yeah, that player was completely out for that combat pretty much, which then made everyone else have to step up and take their place. Bomber Steve also saying the monsters know what they are doing. Publication has awesome advice on making monsters in combat more planned
Good
and
book.
tactical.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
which is definitely something people should pick up if they are finding that their combat maybe is a bit boring or a bit too easy for their game. Cool. We got another question. This might be the last question. We've got 6 minutes left, so we will see if this is the last question. If you have enjoyed this, please do subscribe. We do this every Sunday with a different guest, so make sure to subscribe and come join us next Sunday with all of your questions as well. Cool. So we've got Gail Burnett here. Brunette. No, it is Burnett. Do you find it's better for you to over prepare or improvise sparingly, or under prepare and wing most things?
Okay, this is something that this falls under the category of bad advice that I hear a lot of people say for some reason, and it is like, oh, your players are gonna ruin your plan, so you might as well not prep. No, you need to prep your game, okay? Unless you are some kind of god, I don't know how you can pull an entire session out of nowhere. I have lacked prep twice in like oh god, 4 years I've been DM. It's been a while, but not that long, but it's been a bit. So I've lacked prep like twice, and both of those sessions were god awful because I didn't prep anything because nothing was prepared. You need to prepare your D&D games. I understand that players can ruin your plans. I have a whole video about players and keeping your plans intact with your players and like morphing your plans around what your players do. But yeah, I hear this advice all the time of, oh yeah, you need to really just learn to improvise. That's not really the case for me, at least. The thing that I think you need to learn is you need to learn how to morph your plans around what your players want to do. So instead of trying to like figure out how to create a whole session out of nowhere, which for most people is impossible, you can instead learn how you can make your plans fit with what your players want. Like for example, if your players, like, I'm gonna use Lord of the Rings as a D&D campaign example, but remember in Lord of the Rings how the Fellowship, the party, are trying to travel to Mordor, and their journey can either go one of two directions. Either they can take Gimli's plan and go through the mines of Moria, or they can go over the mountain. Well, in that game, the DM essentially made it impossible to go over the mountain. The players didn't have enough snow equipment, etc. So he essentially forced them to go down into the mines of Moria instead, but still felt like the players had some sort of initiative. They tried to go over the mountain. There was a reasonable reason as to why they couldn't, and now they need to go through the mines of Moria where the DM has the troll encounter and the Balrog encounter and the bridge of Khazad-dûm encounter all planned out and ready for them. Or alternatively, the DM could instead of forcing the players into the mines, the DM could instead just put all those encounters that he had planned for the mines of Moria on top of the mountain instead. I do that all the time. If I've got an encounter plan and it didn't pan out and the players didn't see it, I just put it in my little brain vault and take it out for later. Like for example, one of my worst D&D sessions ever was when I had the players were competing in a tournament where they randomly pick one of four opponents, and that means that three of those boss fights were not used, and I just moved them. The sea serpent that can create giant illusions was moved to a random encounter on the road. The white dragon was moved to a boss fight later on down the campaign, and the Oblex was moved to a boss fight even later down into the campaign. Like those fights were just reused because there's nothing wrong with recycling things that your players didn't end up seeing. They don't know. The only person that knows that those encounters were meant for somewhere else is you. So yeah, as long as you reskin it to fit and it feels like it belongs in that area of your campaign, there's nothing wrong with just moving something to later down the line. But yeah, definitely prepare. Improvise when you have to, and improving, you're probably going to improv most dialogue. You're going to be improving a lot of what happens in combat, just depending on what your players do, obviously. But when it comes to the actual plan of what's going to happen in the session, try to prepare the best you can.
I think I was going to bring up something that you pretty much covered there, where I would say that in my head, I always have like at least 3 backup encounters, and they are usually encounters that the players just didn't go to earlier in the campaign. So I probably would say that I don't improvise much at all because I have those planned encounters. I just haven't planned where they're going to come into the game. And then if they do go down one direction that I didn't expect them to, I can then use one of those encounters that I'd pre planned in that area and just reflavor it. So, as you said, if it was going over the mountain rather than the Mines of Moria, maybe it's a snow troll rather than a normal troll. Maybe it's some, I don't know, some winter goblins or whatever. And it's technically the exact same, really. Yeah. It's just reflavored. So yeah, that's definitely one way. I do think improvising is a good skill for the DMs to have in terms of, as you said, dialogue and role play, because there's no way you can ever plan what your players are going to say to your NPCs
during combat, especially.
It's never going to happen. There's been so many situations where they started asking questions to an NPC, and I didn't have a clue. Like they would be asking questions like about the NPC, like, "Oh, so where do you originally come from?" And it's just a guard, and I'm like, "I have no idea where this person originally comes from." So you just have to go with it and work it out, and maybe some really interesting story beats can come out of those situations. But once again, then between sessions, you would go and you would plan those story beats to come in later into the campaign rather than just improvising it the whole way most of the time.
Yeah.
Definitely. We got Bomber C saying, loving the conversation, a long time 3.5 DM from Australia, just about to launch into 5e next campaign. Well, hopefully you enjoy it. I played Pathfinder for a little bit. I never actually played 3.5. And then I went into 5e, and I definitely like 5e more. So I hope you enjoy it. Have you ever played any other systems?
I've been playing 5e like just most time. The amount of time I have is limited, so I try not to like. I mean, I think I'd enjoy 3.5. I think I'd enjoy Pathfinder. I enjoyed playing Call of Cthulhu when I did, like once. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to learn and prep new systems. It's a lot of work, and honestly, like I enjoy 5e. Like that's what I enjoy playing. So I don't see much incentive for me to change systems to something else because 5e is what I'm using. Even when 5.5 comes out, unless there's something there that I'm like, oh my god, this is so amazing, I'm probably going to stick with 5e just because that's what I know, that's what I own, that's what I have, and that's what I enjoy playing.
Yeah, for me, with systems, they have to be vastly different for me to. So I went from Pathfinder to 5e, but that was like a complete change. Like I've never played Pathfinder again, and I probably never will. But I tried. I always forget if it's called 7 Candles or 10 Candles, but it's a RPG system that is fully based around horror. And it does horror much better than 5e does, because that's what it's made for. And I know I've once again forgot the name of it, but there's one which is all based around superheroes. So there's a different system for superheroes, which once again you wouldn't be able to do in 5e, because like, how do you make a speedster in 5e? You can't. How do you make?
Well, there are ways. There was a RuneSmith video about it. There are ways to do it, but you need to like stack a bunch of stuff together. But if you do, you can move technically faster than the Flash. It's really. I think RuneSmith made a video on this. It combines like Tabaxi, like boost of haste, and a couple feats, and then you can get like 100 some feet of movement or something like that. It's crazy, but yeah, speedsters are. But of course, I don't think that offers any like you can't like supersonic punch somebody, but you can move like a lot and really fast. So
yeah, okay. Well, I'll have to check that out. I did not know that. But yeah, the point anyway is that if you like for fantasy role playing, I will only have one system. If I wanted something completely different,
D&D is not made for everything. There's nothing wrong with finding another system like
definitely
to fit better.
Just to quickly round off, Widgo asked what 5e is. So it's 5th edition is what it stands for. So there has been multiple editions of D&D. They usually refresh it every 5 to 10 years. and we're currently on the 5th edition. So when Bomber Steve said he's going from 3.5 to 5e, he means he's going from 3rd edition. They did like a revised one, which everyone calls 3.5, and he's going to try 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So it's just a different rule set, really, is what it comes down to. And then Bomber Steve saying 5.5 will most likely be only a bit tweaking around the edges, which, yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to end up... Oh, just put the Twitter one back on. Oh, so we're going to end it there. Thank you very much for coming along and answering questions with me.
Thanks for having me on, dude.
Let people know where they can find you.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you. You can find me on YouTube at Crispy's Tavern, D&D tips and stories. You can also find me on Spotify at Crispy's Tavern. I have a bunch of podcasts there that I never update because I don't make money on Spotify. But yeah, you can find me up there. I've got a new episode of RPG Horror Stories coming out this Monday, featuring the subject's going to be our esteemed Matt Mercer. Don't worry, he's not the horror story. That guy's really cool. It's just, but he is involved, so it's a good one. We also have a new advice video coming out Wednesday as normal, and then another horror story Friday, and maybe if I get it done in time, a new episode of my Descent into the Veil D&D podcast campaign diary, where I cover my D&D campaign, and you get to hear about what happened and the cool events and everything. So yeah, if you want to check out my channel, it's linked down in the description. Join up because we've got some really cool stuff up there.
Amazing. So go and check Crispy out. Everything he just said is down in the description as well. So you can just scroll down a little tiny bit and click one link and you're there. So definitely go and do it. Thank you all for coming. If you want to see this every week, it is every week Sunday at the same time. So come by. It's 9 p.m. GMT, so you could convert that to your area. But if you subscribe, you'll get notified when we go live. So make sure to come by every week and get your questions answered. So once again, thank you all for coming, and I will see you next week.